Well, a lot going on in the world these days. We're kind of wondering, some economists say we're going into a recession. Others say the U.S. economy is still very strong and that the job market shows no signs of slowing down at all. So the question is, well, what is it? What is the truth? But the exciting thing about Oregon City, we at the Oregon City Business Alliance want to help promote and support, is there's a feeling of opportunity. And we've had the chance to talk with a lot of small business and large business owners throughout the year about their vision, possibly for the North End District, with the landfill, with the hotel, with a senior care facility, possibly something taking place on the landscape property. There's just a lot of integrated mixed-use opportunities for jobs, good-paying jobs, as well as increased housing stock. Next month, we're going to be talking about the existing housing crisis, and I'll get into that a little later today. But, yes? Okay, well, yeah, William and I had the opportunity with Brian Shaw, I know he's here somewhere, to go to Tumwater Middle School last week, where Seth Henderson had worked with their principal and some of the teachers, and it was a charrette workshop where a group of 8th graders, I'd say probably 40 different workshop charrettes, put together their recommendations for the landfill project, whether it was public engagement, whether it was cultural, historical, recreational, economic. And these 8th graders were really, really excited. It was a great learning tool for them because they got to apply scholastically what they learned in their textbooks into a real world situation. So hopefully the next time that they take the next step in that, we'll get some updates. Some of the groups can get together, consolidate some of their ideas, and I'm sure they'll be talking with Seth, with Summit, about all of those to see if they can become a reality. But with that being said, I'd like to introduce our city manager, Tony Konkol, to come on up front. Let me tell you a little bit about Tony. Oh, well, he did pay me off to say these things, but we'll see how it goes. Tony became the city manager in 2016 and brings nearly 22 years of governmental experience to the position. Prior to his promotion, he was the city's community development director, working for 14 years in the planning department. He holds a Master of Urban and Regional Planning degree from Portland State University, Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies from Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. Tony and his wife, Carrie, have 2 children. He enjoys skiing, hiking, and golfing. Tony, here you go.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me back again. I was trying to remember how many years it's been. It has to be 7 or 8. I think that I've been coming and have this opportunity to present what's happening in Oregon City, what we're seeing, what we're working on. So I really do appreciate that. It's really great to see everybody out and coming together for these meetings and these lunches and just have an opportunity to communicate with one another. I'd like to thank the Oregon City Business Alliance for hosting this event and providing James and I the opportunity to talk about Oregon City, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and be a part of this as well. I really do greatly appreciate that. When I last stood before you about a year ago, we were still navigating through trying times where it seemed like the only thing more unprecedented was the constant need to use the term unprecedented to describe everything that we were doing. Whether that was ice storms, riots, events that we were dealing with, COVID, it just seemed to be one thing after the other. Through it all, I continue to be proud of the way our city staff works tirelessly to provide the highest level of service for our community. Before I share some of the successes from the past year, I do want to take a moment to recognize the staff that are here today that do make that possible. And some that aren't here as well. We just recently hired our first IT director, Michael Dubai, our community development director, Aquila Hurd-Ravitch, our library director, Greg Williams, our police chief, Jim Band, our public works director, John Lewis, our parks and recreation director, Kendall Reed, our Finance Director, Matt Zook, and our Human Resources Director, Patrick Foyle. So if you all wouldn't mind just maybe giving a hand out to them. The amount of work that they do on behalf of this city is tremendous. Any ask they step up to and address. It is one of the reasons we are as successful as we are. Unfortunately, I don't see Chief Band here. If you do get the chance to see him, he is retiring in August. So that'll be a huge loss for us. So make sure you give him an earful about it and pass along how much you've enjoyed working with him for all these years. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Lisa Oriskovich, my assistant. She does a ton of work, steps in, fills in all the roles when they're needed, has been acting as our community development or our communications manager for a while until we were able to get that position filled. So just really appreciate Lisa and all the work she does to help me out in being successful. So the City Commission held elections in November with the new top two system of voting. Commissioners Adam Marl and Rocky Smith were reelected, and Denise McGriff was elected as mayor. The City Commission considered several applicants and chose Mike Mitchell to fill the vacant City Commission seat, which he will serve for the remainder of the term. Commissioner Mitchell was recently elected to serve as the Commission President and has taken on numerous committees to help represent the city throughout the region. In early 2021, the City Commission worked to identify what goals and priorities the city would focus on in the upcoming biennium. You may remember some of those goals from last year's presentation, including promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, investing in current and future capital needs, improving the city's engagement efforts, adopting and implementing a homeless strategy for Oregon City, promoting tourism and supporting economic development, supporting diverse housing options, improving our partnerships that contribute to our hometown feel, and to protect and preserve our environmental health and natural resources. The Commission will once again be taking on the task of identifying goals in early March as they look ahead to the 2023 through 2025 biennium. In the meantime, those goals and priorities I just listed provide the guidance for several large projects that the city has been working on. I think you'll agree with me that the accomplishments you'll hear about show the dedication of those principles identified by the Commission. The city applied for and received nearly $2.5 million in grants to support Oregon City services, including approximately $1.6 million for a Safe Routes to School project on Holcomb Boulevard, which will complete sidewalk gaps and improve pedestrian and bike safety along the corridor. The city also received over $1 million in reimbursements from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for local expenses related to responding to the February 2021 ice storm event. It really do feel fortunate that through the work that we do with our departments, with our Public Works Department, with our Police Department, our Parks Department, in preparing and responding to these events, but also the work that our Finance Department has done so that we can accurately track and respond to the federal requirements that are necessary for this city to be reimbursed when these events happen. There's a lot that occurs. It's not just the initial response, being visible, being out in the community, but it takes months and months to work through trying to reimburse and recuperate what we've invested in the expenses that we needed to make to respond to those events. So it really is a team approach to addressing these large-scale events that we've experienced. The city has recently completed the Community Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Project, which included a DEI task force comprised of community members to discuss experiences and improvements that can be made in our community, including how to foster and sustain a feeling of belonging and inclusion, and creating a work culture based on diversity, equity, and inclusion through communication, training, increased awareness, and accountability. Much like the rest of the state and the country, affordable housing continues to be an issue in our community. Increasing interest rates and the looming threat of an economic downturn have not done much to put downward pressure on homeward prices in the region. A new project near Maple Lane will add more than 170 units of housing to be priced within reach for lower income residents. The city has also taken steps to implement the state mandated land use code changes to broaden housing opportunities throughout Oregon City. Increased housing development options and increased densities allow for additional housing types in traditionally single-family detached areas that have been exclusive to other forms of investment or housing types. Our community development department staff have been working closely with both private and public partners to ensure this addition to our community enhances livability for new and existing residents alike. Affordable housing is also one of the major contributors to what is perhaps the largest issue facing not just our community, but cities everywhere: homelessness. The impacts of homelessness are significant on all involved. The city continues to utilize the homeless liaison officer that works within our police department to assist and coordinate services for those in need, including housing options and mental health services. By merely placing someone in a house isn't enough. There are other underlying issues that need addressing to ensure the transition is not a temporary one. That's why our homeless liaison officer and our behavioral health specialists work together with NPD to identify people in need, find out what those needs are, and then connect them to the right services. I've talked about this for years. It's an issue that continues in our community. But I will say I am very, very proud of the efforts of the Oregon City Police Department and the City Commission for taking the initial steps to fund these positions. These are now being utilized by several jurisdictions and our neighbors throughout this region. It's become a model, it's become a resource, and it's become a network that we can utilize as public agencies that typically do not provide social services at the local level to work hand in hand with other agencies and local jurisdictions to try to address the homeless impacts that we're seeing in our communities. So I do want to thank the Commission and the Police Department for having the initiative and, quite honestly, the vision to take this step. This was not a program that was typically implemented at the small local level, but we've done that, and we are utilizing it to try to make improve those situations as best as we can. A problem this complex doesn't have one solution. There is no magic bullet that acts as a cure-all, and there's not one entity or agency that can do it alone either. It's going to take more than just the city to navigate our way out of this, and that's why our staff works with a growing list of public, private, and nonprofit groups who come together to bring aid to those who need it most. The list of people and groups involved grows almost monthly, and while the task is monumental, we have already been able to see real change with people they have worked with. And it's going to take that approach, helping each person with their specific needs to make a lasting difference in our communities. As many of you are aware, urban renewal in Oregon City has been a challenge for many years. The Urban Renewal Commission unanimously approved the 11th Amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan late last year, which identified a new vision, goals, and projects and created a framework for decision-making to review and consider development proposals and how they meet or implement the goals of the plan. The Urban Renewal Commission worked for many months to identify a plan that provides accountability for how the funds would be invested, clarifies the goals of the plan to improve the community, and targeted projects that will provide a return on investment. The Urban Renewal Plan vision statement identifies the need to create a recognizable, vibrant destination that will provide access to various amenities, including an enjoyable visitor and recreational experience, well-presented historic venues, a livable community with efficient transportation options, and sound investments in public infrastructure. The priorities of that plan were identified by the Urban Renewal Commission after numerous meetings and listening sessions throughout the community. The projects that they have identified are the Rossman Landfill Cleanup and Development, environmental mitigation and development at Clackamet Cove, redevelopment of the Stimson property on Washington Street, reuse and redevelopment of the county courthouse on Main Street, improvements to the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, redevelopment of the 12th and Main property that's currently vacant, and the creation of a downtown railroad quiet zone. The Oregon Court of Appeals issued a long-anticipated decision a couple months ago addressing Section 59E of the Oregon City Charter. This section limited the use of urban renewal as an economic development tool by restricting the use of the funds. The Court of Appeals' final opinion in the challenge to Section 59 affirmed the Circuit Court, finding that the provision was preempted, and in the words of the court, We affirm the trial court, concluding that Section 59E is preempted by Oregon Revised Statute Chapter 457 and does not violate the city's home rule, and that nothing of that section survives that conclusion. What remains in the Oregon City Charter is a requirement that prior to the issuance of any debt, the agency will receive voter approval. The Urban Renewal Commission has prepared a ballot measure that will be on the ballot in May for Oregon City voters to consider. The measure will ask for voter approval for the agency to borrow up to $44 million through bonding or other measures to accomplish the projects that they've identified. If passed, the measure would be paid back through revenue already being collected from within the Urban Renewal District boundary. No additional funds are necessary to cover the debt obligation proposed. Tourism remains a vital part of our city's economy, and promoting tourism activities within the community have been improving. Staff is working with the City Commission to consider changing the way tourism opportunities and amenities are marketed in our community. We are in the early stages of determining how tourism promotion efforts are handled, not only by the staff, but potentially by a destination marketing organization, or DMO. This is still in the early stages. We have only made this proposal to the commissioner just recently, but it was met with excitement from the commissioners. I hope you'll be involved and follow developments on this front as we see how representatives from the tourism industry in our community propose to move forward with the next steps. Many of you have heard of the American Rescue Plan Act, or what we refer to as ARPA. The city received approximately $8.3 million in ARPA funding. The largest investment of those funds will be for water infrastructure, totaling approximately $5.6 million. With ARPA funds, along with savings and anticipated rates, the city is working to secure $28 million in funding to complete several significant water infrastructure projects. The funding is being provided through a 50-50 Environmental Protection Agency lending program called the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA. The projects provide local jurisdictions very favorable terms and repayment options for water infrastructure projects, such as customized repayment schedules, longer loan periods, and deferrals. The city received voter approval in November of '21 to take on the debt and is now working to finalize the agreements and projects, which will increase cybersecurity for city's water systems, complete 5 years' worth of water pipeline repair and undersized water line replacements. The Henrici Reservoir transmission line improvements will be completed, addressing resiliency and peak summer flow demands. And there will be replacement of the Henrici Reservoir pump station in Fairway Downs, addressing an undersized pump station and improving services in the area. I'd like to congratulate Patty Nelson, Dana Webb, and John Lewis, as well as Matt Zook in our finance department, in putting together this competitive application for this funding. It took quite a bit coming up with the funding levels, identifying the projects that would be acceptable to the federal government to receive funding, and then obviously receiving voter approval for the debt so that we could actually utilize this program in our community to make these needed water infrastructure improvements. Additional ARPA projects identified by the Commission include studying how to expand the availability of broadband to the community. Obviously, having gone through COVID, work from home, school from home, the need for high-speed internet and broadband service just became more and more evident. So that's something that we're looking at, is how we can improve and increase those opportunities for our community members. Construction of a restroom in downtown Oregon City. This was being proposed near the entrance to the elevator down on the lower level, serving multiple needs. One is from a tourism standpoint, as well as the ability for visitors to our community to have restroom facilities that are available. Right now, they really don't exist in our downtown core. So we do look forward with getting that completed here in the very near future. Providing meeting spaces for neighborhood associations. This is something that we've continually heard of, is what are the opportunities to increase opportunities and spaces that are available for our volunteer organizations and our neighborhood associations within our existing facilities. And then providing needed upgrades to our parking kiosks downtown. Little embarrassing to say, they run on 2G, which does not exist anymore. So they are in desperate need of being updated, and that is occurring. The Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde continues to make progress on removing buildings from the property down at Old Blue Heron site and working to implement environmental remediation projects in coordination with state and federal regulatory agencies. The city is looking forward to working with Grand Ronde on potential changes to the developed plan that has been adopted for the property once they are comfortable sharing and submitting this information for public review. The city looks forward to working with Clackamas County to investigate the options for the reuse of the county courthouse on Main Street as the new courthouse is being constructed and relocated up to Red Soils Court. The existing courthouse brings a significant number of users to Main Street during the weekday, and transitioning to a new use that supports downtown is necessary to limit the impacts of that relocation. The City Commission recently created a Youth Advisory Committee to engage with students within our community. The Youth Advisory Committee was created to provide local students a voice in their municipal government, build an understanding of governance and leadership, and to provide opportunities to engage and serve the community. The Youth Advisory Committee will be guided by the belief that local involvement at a young age is crucial to ensuring a well-informed and engaged citizenry in the future, and to provide an opportunity for members to become equipped with the knowledge and leadership skills necessary to become active contributors in the community now and in the future. The Youth Advisory Committee will be comprised of 9 students. It closes today, so if you know anybody, get them to submit as quick as possible. I'd like to thank Commissioner Adam Marl and the Mayor, Denise McGriff, on really championing and spearheading this effort to create a Youth Advisory Committee here in Oregon City. I think it'll be a great addition to the committees that we currently do have. Another key element that enhances the livability and really sets a community apart is its parks. We have a very active Parks and Recreation Department in Oregon City that continues to provide new and exciting opportunities for our residents and to enjoy their community. And I'd really like to congratulate them on a very successful summer of concerts in the park, movies in the park, really trying to get those programs that we've traditionally done back up and running at full speed and improving on them as best we can. The latest park in our system was opened in public in May last year. The Hazel Grove Park is a beautiful ADA accessible facility in the Hazel Grove Westling neighborhood with plenty of space and structures for families to play. I'd also like to thank Water Environmental Services. We entered into a good neighbor agreement with Water Environmental Services that allows us to invest in park improvements, pedestrian improvements, habitat improvements, educational opportunities down around Clackamas Park, Clackamas Cove, Clackamas River, Willamette River. So we were able to do a pretty significant project this year that dovetailed with some of the damage that we saw from the ice storm. We were able to get down along the Clackamas River Trail, improve parking stalls, the pedestrian path, tree trimming, safety trimming in that area. So it's just another example of a great partnership working together to make improvements in our community. So I really do want to thank them for proposing this Good Neighbor Agreement. It's something, I believe it's about 10 years. The program will last. We'll revisit at that point, but it is a stable funding source that allows us to do some projects that traditionally we wouldn't be able to do on our own. Another measure that you're going to see in May on the ballot is what we're calling the Park Place Park street dedication. So Park Place Park went through a master planning process back in 1996. And as part of that, they identified the need for a 40-foot street connecting Front Avenue to Hiram Avenue so that Hiram wouldn't go through the middle of the park anymore. Right now, it's an undeveloped right-of-way that exists. Unfortunately, the dedication never occurred. So now it's a charter park, and it needs to go to a vote of the people. So the City Commission will be putting on a request to dedicate 40 feet of the north boundary of Park Place Park to provide this new dedication of a street that'll connect Front to Hiram and alleviate the need for Hiram to ever be constructed through the middle of Park Place Park. So be on the lookout for that for those of you voting in May. As the city continues to add new parks to the system over the past few years, we continue to look to the future of what our residents want and need in the way of parks infrastructure. The Parks Master Plan process is continuing. Through this, park improvements, future investments, and acquisition areas will be identified, as well as how to fund the long-term development and growth necessary to meet the needs of the community. A meeting was just held a few days ago, and we continue to share the plan with the public and solicit feedback and ideas to ensure that our parks meet the needs of our residents today and in the future. One of the key tenets of that plan is to provide equitable access to parks for all residents and users. That's the reasonings behind the parks fee schedule that has been a topic of more than a few discussions lately. The goal behind the schedule is to fairly and equitably apply the long-standing fees across the board to those that are users. It takes a lot of work and staffing to maintain these parks, and user fees help cover some of the costs and effort to maintain our high standards of providing access to our parks and residents. So part of this is that those utilizing our parks, if it's free, how many are benefited, is there a charge to use it, creates a sliding scale of how much that use should be subsidized. If a program utilizing our parks is private, or let's say it costs $250, $300 to join the group that uses the park at the exclusive use and without the use of the public being able to utilize it, so essentially it's exclusive, they are going to pay more to use our public facilities than one that is provided free to all users regardless of what they're able to pay. That is the concept behind how we create our parks user fees. It is not meant to target specific youth organizations that we all agree provide benefits to our community. But it is looking at how do we do this equitably. And I will say one of the biggest struggles we've had is that when everything is always for free, changing the model of free is very, very difficult. But we do believe that we are trying to do this fairly, equitably. This is not a money grab. This does not pay the full cost of that service to begin with. But it is trying to set up a system that we can fairly charge fees across the board as these requests come in. Many of you were there this past fall when crowds of residents from both Oregon City and West Linn came together in celebration of one of our many historic icons, the Arch Bridge 100-year celebration of its grand opening. The event celebrated diverse cultures that have called this area home for the past century and longer. It has served as another example of the partnership between the city and the many groups of volunteers who all have the same overall goal, and that's to make Oregon City the best version of itself that it possibly can be. This event is one example of the importance of our community's heritage and showcasing how it's an integral part of our identity. That's why it's been a major component of our tourism marketing efforts, making sure Oregon City remains on the map for visitors in the Portland region and beyond. Of course, not all our anniversaries are centennials. We just celebrated the one-year anniversary of our Public Works building. This state-of-the-art structure doesn't just provide a new home for our public work, parks, and IT departments. It increases efficiency of operations that allows for faster coordinated response to citywide emergencies. The building was constructed for a little bit over $12.8 million. It was constructed without taking on any debt, and it reused an existing building that was there previous. It really is a wonderful building if you haven't had the chance to visit it. I'm sure John would love to show you through it. The ribbon cutting was held in January of last year, and the building received second place from the Daily Journal of Commerce in the Public Facilities category, and was awarded the Project of the Year in the $5 to $25 million category from the Oregon chapter of the American Public Works Association. I'd like to congratulate the Public Works staff and the team from Scott Edwards Architecture for reusing that old building and turning it into a true asset for the department and the community. While roads may not be the most exciting part of a city, they're something that we all use every day. The latest improvement was something I discussed earlier, was the Holcomb Boulevard Enhancement Program. Thanks to grant funding from ODOT, work will commence on improvements to Holcomb in the area of Holcomb Elementary. There will be 7-foot sidewalks, 6-foot bike lanes, a crosswalk with flashing signage, and other improvements aimed at making it safer for students to get to and from their school. Work should kick off this summer with opening scheduled to coincide with the start of the fall 2024 school year. Now I mentioned how that funding comes from ODOT, and that's a welcome partnership. But what we hear more about when it comes to ODOT is the continued progression towards tolling on I-205. The City Commission continues to exercise all possible options to stop the plan, or at least find ways to address the many concerns residents have. The diversion of traffic onto city roads that aren't meant to handle those type of loads, the increase in costs for our residents when we're already dealing with so many other hits to our monthly budgets, are two of the issues that we hear about most often. Timing of tolling on the Abernathy Bridge and then considering and tolling the entire system 1 year later just doesn't make sense. And as the mayor has identified, we really don't want to be the test case or the guinea pig for their tolling proposal. We also believe that this is not equitable and it disproportionately impacts Oregon City and West Lynn with the proposal as it's being discussed. The truth of the matter is something that Mayor McGriff said during a recent meeting, that ODOT is operating under the direction of the legislature. As such, only the legislature themselves can have any real impact on this plan. If you share these concerns, everyone writing their representatives at the state will hopefully bring everyone to the table to not just hear concerns, but listen to them and hopefully take meaningful action to address and alleviate those issues. If you are interested, the Oregon City website has the direct email, phone number, and contact for your state legislatures, as well as the applicable committees that are reviewing tolling and I-205. And we certainly encourage you to provide your comments as you see best. I think you'll agree that the past few months continue to offer new challenges, but also new opportunities. And I also think we'd also agree that we'd love to experience some time where resiliency wasn't a trait that was so necessary or so frequently referenced. But that word continues to be a key aspect of how the city of Oregon City operates, how we'll continue to operate. And as we focus on the goals and priorities that are intended to keep our city one that we're all proud to call home. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude and turn it over to James Graham, our Economic Development Manager, to finish up the second part of the presentation. So thank you for taking the time to listen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. Make sure that's still on. I don't think it is. How about now? Oh, well, I got a loud voice. You can hear me. Anyway, thanks a lot, Tony. A lot of amazing and updated factual information there. I saw everybody was taking a lot of notes, right? But we do appreciate your updates. There is a lot that's taking place in Oregon City. We may not see it all because we just drive, our routes in our lives, and sometimes we don't get to appreciate everything that's going on behind the scenes. But believe me, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of commitment on the part of our public servants in order for those of us that are the citizens to see the finished product. So I think both Tony, your staff, James, the mayor, the commission, planning commission, everyone really deserves another hand of applause. So thank you. So I also want to thank the City of Oregon City for being the sponsor of today's event. So that's kind of a icing on the cake for the Oregon City Business Alliance. So now we have James Graham, our Economic Development Manager for Oregon City. He has about 25 years of experience dealing with federal governments, state governments, county governments, local municipalities. Just about anybody you can think of, James has touched their world. But economic development is a driving force on what allows businesses not only to survive but to thrive. And through economic development, we need to look outside the box sometimes to find creative ways for them to apply for grants, apply for funding from the state, or whatever available resource there is to go ahead and keep their workforce educated and trained, be able to keep them employed, and just look for future opportunities. So with that being said, James, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's all yours.
Thank you. Tony's taller than I am. Everybody's taller than I am. Well, Happy New Year. Here we are again. And I wish you all a very, very successful and productive new year. How about those eggs? If they get any more expensive, the Easter Bunny will be hiding pitchers instead of eggs for the spring. I always start with the definition of economic development because I find lots of people have their own idea, but this definition has helped me do the work of economic development for over 25, 30 years. And economic development is a a strategic and collaborative process that creates an environment that systemically supports new investment, creates or retains jobs, broadens the tax base, and therefore, this is the most important part, improving the quality of life of people. Now, our work is primarily to attract primary jobs, full-time, year-round jobs created or retained by businesses that provide goods and services that are primarily exported out of the community. In other words, new money coming in. That's what we focus our efforts on. And I'll do,
Sorry, James, our computer is real slow today.
okay. Well, by this, that is slow. We need fiber optics. So these are the topics I'd like to cover with you today. And while I won't read them, you can obviously see what they are. So what you're looking at are the accomplishments of our economic development strategic plan, the department's plan. And I'm proud to say that over 70% of the plan is being implemented. And out of so many plans that we have on our shelves, this is one of those that are actually being implemented. So we launched a brand new website, economic development website. We provided a business guide, and we outreach to a lot of Oregon City manufacturers. We also support Clackamas County's Child Care for All, because who would have thought that child care would be an important economic development issue? But here we are. Someone has to take care of the kids. Someone has to, when they go to work, they have to feel confident that that is happening. We had over 20 businesses to what we call our focus industry. And right now we're working with our community development department in crafting what we call the Ombudsman Initiative, and a bit more about that in a few seconds. Talent ready. No matter how many incentives you give to a company or provide to a company, if they don't have a viable, ready workforce, nothing will help you. Nothing. Talent Ready recognizes that there are people that are out there, young people, especially between the ages of 18 to 35, that are checked out. Their parents are checked out, and it's very difficult for them to get a hold of their lives. There are a variety of obstacles to finding employment for those individuals: alcoholism, mental health issues, and others. But otherwise, we should be very pleased to have a workforce that is so young. 18 to 35, a large section here. There are communities in this country that would love to have what you have, and would take it if they could. We want to keep our young people in this community. We want to keep them near their families. They want to be near to their families, maybe not too close, but close enough. But they want opportunities. And so Talent Ready is designed to help young people identify all the resources that are available on the state, federal, county, and local level so they can get themselves together for eventually a long-term employment experience. Talent Ready is very unique in the sense that it actually encourages the mental health community to be involved with the program. Everyone goes through triage. You get a mental health counselor to deal with whatever issues you're dealing with before you go to work, as opposed to going to work and dealing with whatever ails you at the moment. Our business and outreach efforts, I went backwards. Not only is it going slow forward, it's also going backwards by itself. We have a billboard, and other billboards are coming up to advertise Talent Ready, and you'll see more of them all across. Really, actually, we're doing it outside and around the perimeter of the city and other communities so that people understand that Oregon City is serious about workforce development. And you will see that as more time continues. The Ombudsman Initiative, say that 5 times. The preemptive, it is an initiative that we really should have had years ago, whereby it is designed to interface with developers and investors ahead of time. And not a situation where you do something, then you ask for forgiveness later, but something where you actually, where the ombudsman engages you, you engages that or those individuals, and find out about and learn about issues regarding our code, how we do our business, how we conduct how we implement our code, and find out those things in our municipal process that could help you get through your project. It's troubleshooting, in other words. It's providing education to developers and others who have projects. Also, city procurement. Our government spends a little over $10 million in goods and services on an annual basis. And the small business community is an important part of this community, and it's designed to help engage them so that they can find new markets. And city government also can be a new market. Now, you still have to provide a good product. It still has to be competitively priced. But if those things are true, chances are you should be able to win a contract with our government, whether or not it's catering to machinery purchasing. But the issue is we need to get away from dealing with the same old individuals all the time and actually be more competitive in our purchases and engaging a variety of organizations and entities to get involved with city government purchasing. I think you can outrun this one. Looking ahead, we will continue to visit our target industries. Our child care development initiatives will be developed, and we'll continue to work with companies to do that type of outreach. And business, we'll continue to establish partnerships with our business. With our organizations to attract businesses, particularly PGE and others that have come forward to be involved in those type of activities. And I already mentioned the Ombudsman program. New business investment and attraction. Currently, we're working with 2 technology companies to relocate to Oregon City. One is in Houston, Texas, and one is in the region. And when you say high tech, we're talking about extremely high tech, where robots are everywhere. And if we're successful, these companies will be here and employ individuals in our city and our region. And they will need engineers, they will need all types of professionals to be involved in their endeavor. We're looking forward, and hopefully they will choose us. But as you know, all the decisions are not in our hands. We also actually helped a company by the name of Communications Northwest to relocate to Oregon City from Portland. And that was actually during the development of this strategic plan. And I believe they have about 20 employees or so. In terms of fiber optics, oh, there we go. This is going to be a long presentation. But actually, I was going to talk about fiber optics. There is a draft report that's actually complete, that is completed by Magellan Advisors, the consultant that we hired to be involved with this project. And while I can't comment much on it, it does reveal certain things. And one of the things is that it is this thing is going by itself. One of the important things is that it identifies that the fact that our high-speed wire internet services are not good enough. And a lot of households in our community have uneven service. And a lot of businesses in our community have uneven services. So therefore, that hampers economic development. That hampers the quality of even education if people can't access apps in their own homes. We're beginning to work more from home these days, and it's more important that we have fiber optic technology. So in the next few weeks, the City Commission will have the plan, and it will have staff's recommendations as to how to proceed with that plan. Of course, no option is inexpensive. They're all expensive. But the consequences are also more expensive because we have to be part of the 21st century, and our businesses won't stay unless they have the capability to do their business on the internet. Entrepreneurship, and then I'll get to urban renewal. Entrepreneurship, we have been doing a lot of work regarding entrepreneurship. And this year, the city, we have entered into one of the first public-private partnerships with a bank or a credit union, Clackamas Federal Credit Union, and the City of Oregon City, and Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon have all three entered into a partnership whereby we're providing startup companies up to $20,000 for their development. The interest rate is 0.5% for 1 year, and interest only for 1 year, 0.5% only for 1 year. And then with the second year, there's principal and interest that comes after that. But every partner in this arrangement has something to do. The credit union and the city provides financial support, while Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon also provides technical assistance. So we launched this spring, and we funded 2 women-owned businesses, although we had 18 interested applicants. And then there's another program that we're starting called the Micro Enterprise Grant Program, funded by the state of Oregon. And this is for micro businesses, 5 or fewer employees. So we're doing a lot for small businesses because we lost about 200 businesses during the pandemic. 200 small businesses, that's a lot. And we have about 1,700 businesses in Oregon City. So that's a pretty big chunk. Urban renewal. The city manager talked a great deal about urban renewal, so I won't stay there. But to say that urban renewal is really the most significant economic development tool that you have. And it is so significant that without its investment, without its promise, that this community very well may see a slower future. But it is vital. And there are lots of communities around this city, throughout the country, that have had urban renewal, successful projects, and they are benefiting from that investment. Lake Oswego is just down the street. That's one of those successful projects. So please keep in mind that this is an extremely valuable project, and it will determine whether or not you are in the game of economic development. Tourism. A lot has been done in tourism. And the outcome of our efforts has really increased the number of visitors to this city. We have raised the visibility of this city through our efforts in tourism. Whether it's the Concierge Institute, or whether it's we're launching the brand, we've launched the brand Oregon's Hometown, Welcome Home, or whether we have promoted our existing events, whether it's City First, or the Arts Festival, or the Brew Fest. We can really attest that more people have come to Oregon City to see those events because of our efforts in marketing and promotion. We also have learned that through our own market surveys that people really do like to eat, drink, and participate in experiences. They really like that. And so that's what they've said in our surveys, and that's how they've responded to our advertisements. However, as the city manager has mentioned, we've decided to take a different path, giving the various organizations, primarily the nonprofits, an opportunity to manage the tourism initiative that they so much need. So we will work with them to get this separate entity outside the city government up and running and on its way. And they will be responsible for running this initiative. So, what's ahead? As I mentioned, urban renewal is extremely important to you. Whether you believe it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, it's going to be an important player in this work. Fiber optic technology, we're working to get it not only in the businesses, but also in the homes. You will be amazed at the speed and the secure ability of fiber optics when you start using it with your activities. Talent ready. I can't say enough about that because I think about the young people in this community, and they need to stay here, and they need opportunity. And this provides that promise. Oregon City, there are too few people in this community that own a lot of land. And when you have those few individuals, or few number of individuals that have so much land, you really don't have control of your city. And so therefore it's important that city government gets more involved in owning property, whether it's through urban renewal or whether it's through other initiatives. You have more control over your community when that happens. And many developers have come to me on, I don't think a week goes by, when they're looking for specific things. And unfortunately, we're not able to give them a 50,000 square foot building existing on 20 acres of land. Standard question, every other week, standard. And so therefore, we really need to take control of our community and work with those that will work with us with regard to land development. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough journey. The Ombudsman program is also something, as I mentioned, should have happened many years ago, but nevertheless, we will be starting that program to be in communication with the development community as well as the business community with regard to development and processes. And always we will support entrepreneurship because that's the lifeblood of our future. So, with that said, I will also say that we're trying to talk ourselves into a recession. And I'm hoping we're failing because all indications are that we will not have the type of recession that we feared. All indications are that it will be shallow. All indications are it will not be long, but we will have a downturn. But nevertheless, there's sunshine on the other side of that tunnel, and our future looks bright with the right decisions. I thank you for this time, and I am bullish on Oregon City. Thank you.
to a few of the questions we have from our audience, as well as some that were sent in earlier. But thank you very much, James. Make sure this is, yellow light says it's on, but I don't, can you hear me okay? Maybe? All right, well, we'll give it a shot here. But thank you very much, James. I really picked up on a lot of the key phrases that you shared with us, so I'm going to kind of follow up with some of those comments and turn it into some direct questions, if you don't mind. But you mentioned that urban renewal is the most significant economic resource that the city has. And we've seen it successfully used now down in Wilsonville. I think they have 4 or 5 urban renewal districts that are thriving, truly employing a lot of different individuals and different pay scales. With the landfill and some of the other projects in the North End district, somewhat dependent, if not hugely dependent, on urban renewal. And it sounds like the Urban Renewal Commission voted unanimously to include the landfill and some of those other projects going forward in that $44 million bonding capability. Where do you see that going next? What has to happen next in order for that? I know you've got the main ballot measure, but what is the Urban Renewal Commission going to do to try to promote the approval of that, since they did vote unanimously in support of it?
So, as a public agency, so the City Commission, the Urban Renewal Commission and the City Commission are going to consider the final ballot measure Wednesday night. At that point, as public agencies, public employees, we are neutral as to the ballot measure. So essentially we
You're not talking about employees,
well, so
Urban Renewal Commission.
maybe we should bring Urban Renewal Commissioners up to ask them what they would like to do. We don't have that answer.
Okay.
What steps that they're going to take on their own to advocate either for or against the ballot measure. I would assume it's going to be before, but really that's something that they need to work on their own. We, as staff, cannot assist them with preparing whatever position they're going to take for or against that ballot measure. So we don't have the answer for that. But what I would say when we talk about urban renewal as a tool, you know, I think one thing the state really needs to look at is how we tax. It's created such inequities, and it's interesting in Oregon City, the metro region, there's such a disparity between assessed value and real market value. The benefit has been that when we've gone through recessions, we typically continue to see a tax increase, which doesn't impact the local government. Now, it hits different jurisdictions differently. Obviously, Southern Oregon got crushed when the assessed value crossed the real value and their property tax collection went down. But another example of that is, I don't know if anybody realized when we voted for this, every new house comes in gets assessed at whatever the assessed to real market value is. So a brand new home built tomorrow, for a measure that was meant to keep people in their homes from increasing property taxes 25 years ago, gets a significant break on what they pay in terms of property taxes, which obviously directly impacts every jurisdiction in a state that relies on property taxes as one of its main drivers. And I bring this up because while we're certainly supportive, so, you know, everyone's like, oh, you just want to improve houses because you get a bunch of money that comes in, right? And it's not the way it works. So let's just say for urban renewal, Clackamas County roughly, it's about $16.50, $17 per thousand is pretty much all rolled up Clackamas County taxes, Oregon City, the districts. So a $100 million project, that's $1.7 million in taxes across all those agencies. So just think about how many $100 million projects we need to actually move the needle on the services that we provide. Okay, so you can imagine what a $500,000 home brings in, right? In Oregon City, it's $4.45 per thousand. You know, it's not a lot of money. So when we think about how do we strategically invest in these areas and why urban renewal is such a tool, it's kind of ironic that One of the biggest complaints I hear is, oh, this money goes to over to here and to the state. This truly keeps it in Oregon City. Every dollar that we can reinvest in our community to improve livability, improve infrastructure, bring the projects that we want to fruition. So anyway, can't exactly answer your question on what urban renewal and city commissioners are going to do to advocate for or against this measure, but it is complicated. There are structural imbalances in the system that exist that I hope someday will grow up as a state and address.
That was a better answer than I expected. I
Thanks.
appreciate that.
I've been sitting on that one for a while.
You're pretty good on your feet there, Tony.
It's very, very frustrating when you see
have to commend
the
you
money
for that.
and how it truly breaks down.
All right. You mentioned tolling, and obviously that's a really, really critical topic, especially since it seems like ODOT seems to have deaf ears when it comes to the representatives from the municipalities that are going to be the most severely impacted by not putting together the mitigation plans ahead of time. It seems like they want to go ahead and wait to see what the impacts of diversion are on the local streets and then create a mitigation plan to try to address it. It's kind of like getting the cart in front of the horse, because while that's happening, businesses are going to be impacted, they're going to suffer. What action plans can the cities like Westland and Oregon City take, even including a lawsuit, to try to slow that process down?
Well, I think I talked about this a little bit. I mean, really this is a creation of the state legislature, and the only way that ODOT can't just not do it. They've been directed, I think twice now, by the legislature in a bill signed by the governor indicating tolling is going to move forward. If my commission adopted something twice, signed it twice, and I blew it off, I would not be here presenting to you today. So, I think this is what I was discussing earlier, is that really it's reaching out to the legislature, our representatives, our senators, to have the discussion about we really need to rethink this whole process, from tolling just the Abernathy Bridge section, which will have an unequitable impact on Oregon City, West Linn, Gladstone, Stafford, that area. And now there's this discussion of essentially coming from Boone's Bridge north up 205 and I-05 to the Columbia River, but maybe a year, maybe 18 months later. Like, it makes no sense. If we're going to do it, do it. If we're not, don't. But have that conversation, and that really does need to happen at the legislative level. And that's, once again, why we fully encourage folks to engage. Many of you may or may not be aware that there's a new state law that all committee meetings, public meetings need to include a Zoom virtual component, which means you do not need to drive to Salem to participate in any of these hearings. You can register, participate via Zoom, and make sure that your voice is heard at those legislative committees where these decisions are being discussed and made. Is a lawsuit possible? We can sue for anything. I think that focusing on the legislature that actually created the law is probably going to be the most effective method to try to change what's currently happening.
And right now, as I understand it, the timetable for the I-205 portion is next year for the implementation of the tolling mechanisms.
Do you remember, John?
2024, right, yeah. Which isn't that far away. Time goes by fast. Mm-hmm. Okay, James, your turn. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay,
you mentioned in your comments that you get a call every week from a potential user looking for a 50,000 square foot building on a 20-acre parcel, and you have to say what?
I have to say, hold on, wait on. What I have to really say to them is that while we don't have that at the moment, we are working on it as a consequence of our economic development strategy. And while that's not a satisfying answer to you at the moment, that is the truth. And they appreciate the truth. And they appreciate me being forthright, as I am, with that type of position. However, I also ask, are there suppliers that you would refer us to that we could accommodate their needs? Because a lot of times the suppliers need something smaller or maybe something not as significant.
Well, let me throw out another idea just for the fun of it. As you know, we have a new governor in the state of Oregon who has a very ambitious goal of 36,000 housing units each year, but more importantly, to reevaluate the entire land use process in the state of Oregon, which is not working properly. We wouldn't have the need for 554,000 new homes over the next 20 years if the land use process was working. Presently, Metro is brokering a deal to take out a portion of the Park Place concept plan east of Holly Lane and south of Redland Road, and giving Tigard 350 acres of mixed-use development property for River Terrace 2. County Commissioner Tootie Smith, chair, is fighting that intensely, saying, we're not getting anything back, Metro. You're taking economic opportunity, land that could be zoned for industrial uses, to be able to build a 50,000 square foot structure on, and we're getting nothing in return. What is the city's policy on that? Because from what I can tell, according to Metro, it's a done deal.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you
So-
use the word policy.
So the section in question is south of Redland Road and east of Holly. It was not zoned for industrial, it was not zoned for commercial. It was residential, potential future use. I think in this city we've struggled. We have 3 concept plan areas that we did have drastically underperformed. I think Park Place was around 1,200 housing units. South End was about 1,000. I think Thimble Creek was probably around another 1,100. There's 3,500 housing units roughly in those areas. But that's not industrial. It's not employment. A portion of Thimble Creek would be. So really, it's how do we get that infrastructure out there, and that's some of the investments that we've made is. Extending water, extending sewer down Beaver Creek Road to Thayer, trying to open up those areas. There's the new county transportation facility going in right across from Clackamas Community College, which will help. It's really, we're competing against lands that have infrastructure essentially shovel ready, right? So the water's been built, the sewer's been built, the curbs are in, and it's hard. If you've just got vacant land that's under disjointed ownership, trying to put together, significant enough land with multiple property owners, it just takes time when other jurisdictions are ahead of us, years and years ahead in terms of land acquisition, infrastructure investments that are being made. So yeah, it's a tough balancing act of available lands, what they're going to be used for. Is it all residential? Is it trying to provide employment? Is it trying to provide those manufacturing jobs locally so that maybe we can reduce some of the trips that are needed on 205 or 213? And it's hard out at the edge, right? It's very, very competitive in the region.
Tony, you mentioned when we were talking about tolling, the most effective way to try to address that is to deal with the legislature. With the governor putting a mandate of 36,000 homes, and just so everybody can put it in perspective, we haven't hit that number since the 70s. We haven't hit that number since the 70s. The chances of us achieving that now with the existing rules and regulations and policies is slim and none. Working through the legislature, as you recommended, is it possible that once you have the water infrastructure to serve Thimble Creek, which is the Oregon City Golf Club, and that surrounding area, that you could make a swap with Metro to say, we're going to let you take the Park Place master plan property or concept plan property out, but give us more industrial land up by Thimble Creek because that's flatter, more usable for industrial uses? Working with the legislature, is that something the city would support?
I mean, we'd support anything. I think that, though, if you go look at that land, everything that's realistically developable has been included in the UGB. Oregon City is dealing with significant topography issues around our edges. So if you look at where our urban growth boundary currently is, it really does mimic kind of the edge of our upper area. So once you come off of that, so let's say you're going down south on 213 towards Stone Creek, our UGB kind of stops up at top. You go down the hill. I mean, sure, we can serve it. It's going to be expensive. Is that really the industrial areas? I mean, that's a larger discussion about where
Right.
is that more appropriate.
I just feel it's important that Oregon City and Clackamas County get something in return for giving up developable land. As difficult as it is to get developable land these days. But, you know, time will tell on that. Maybe there's another stone that hasn't been turned over yet. One of our guests would like to know, when can they expect fiber cable to be installed?
Well, if it's as fast as that slideshow thing, it's going to be, I'll be dead by then. So I think that all really depends on the options before the commission and which option they take. You haven't seen this study, so there are several options. And I don't want to go a great deal into it because the commission hasn't seen the study yet, and they need to see it first. So I would say it's going to take a while, but based on the options they choose, we'll determine that factor.
Okay. And James, you mentioned that you're presently working with two very sophisticated high-tech companies that are considering relocating to Oregon City. Have they shared with you how many employees that they would bring with them or employ once they're here, and what the average pay scale might be for their employees?
One had mentioned about 30, 35 employees. The salary is pretty high, $75,000, $80,000, $90,000 start. That's one of them. And another one is at about 10 to 15, but it's technology, but they need room for growth. And they seem to be on a fast growth plane, so they're looking at, when they get up to speed, they're looking at about 40 to 50 employees.
Okay, great, thank you. Looking at the North End District as one bookend in a bookshelf, the Tumwata Blue Heron site at the Willamette River Falls is the other bookend on Main Street. Can you give us an update as to where the city is with redevelopment of that site? Has the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde sought out urban renewal funding or any other type of EPA grants that you're aware of?
Yeah. So our discussions with Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, my understanding is that they do have, they received about a $2 million federal earmark for infrastructure, and then they are working with EPA and DEQ on some environmental mitigation opportunities on the property, so site cleanup, investigation. And then they're continuing to do demolition of buildings on the site in preparation for future development. So many of you have been involved with that project. The partners had adopted a development plan, kind of an overarching plan for that property, rezoned it, identified some specifics in terms of trip caps and how infrastructure would be provided. So Grand Ronde, once they bossed it, have been working through that plan that was adopted, and we anticipate they'll be coming in with some minor changes to that once their council is ready to bring that forward. So, inching along.
Getting there.
Getting there.
Will we be dead on that one too, James? I hope so too.
They have not asked for urban renewal, and it's actually not in the district. The very front parking lot office right on 99 is in the district. The remainder of that property, everything south of there is not. So it wouldn't even be eligible.
Well, once we get an update from Cheryl Kennedy or somebody else there with the tribe, we'll schedule another forum where they can go ahead and share their ideas and their vision for us.
Yep.
Okay, what does support for nonprofits look like, and how can we get information about that?
What does support for nonprofits
Profits look like, and how do we get information? Is that for James?
Well, in that we're in the business of for-profit, primarily, I think the future for nonprofits is really in tourism. And with that said, we will eventually have a DMO, where the DMO actually will focus on nonprofit activity and relationships based on tourism, because that's basically what has been the case.
All right, and James, you mentioned the public-private partnership that was recently put together for the credit union that's located up on top of the hill, which is a fairly impressive facility with everything that they've done with the grounds for that as well. Do you have in the works any other public-private partnerships right now?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, public-private partnerships with respect to attracting companies to the city.
Yes.
PGE is one of them. I've worked with utilities before, and they have been extremely valuable in their engagement. But yes, to answer that question, yes, particularly when it comes to attracting other companies. The other private nonprofit partnership is really to promote the arts. That we have an arts commission now. After 16 years, the Economic Development Department, in conjunction with the commission, have reinstituted the Arts Commission. And there is a lot of opportunity for private companies to get involved in promoting the arts in Oregon City, because through our survey people really do appreciate the arts. And when you're able to display your appreciation of the art in your community, not only does it look better, but the arts attract a higher dollar value, spending, because upper middle income individuals do buy it. And also restaurants have a complementary relationship with the arts, or retail, I should say retail. So you wouldn't believe it, but a lot of people don't understand that art is an economic development entity in and of itself. And so we're glad to work with the Arts Commission in doing that. But there are a number of public-private partnerships that I can go into, but those two come to mind right away.
Okay, great. Well, Linda, you're probably glad to hear that. Yeah, good. You mentioned that people are really into experiences, and I noticed a slide that you had on the board showed people kayaking up around the falls. Do you have an update on the status of the redevelopment of Clackamat Park? Isn't that going through a new master plan design?
It is. And go ahead.
Yeah, so the commission did approve, they had a public engagement process, went through, brought in a consultant, looked at what the opportunities were down at Clackamat Park. So that was approved by the commission about 3 or 4 months ago, I believe, the concept. So obviously that'll need to be refined in terms of, how to reuse, how to rethink Clackamat Park.
Okay. All right, good. James, I believe that you mentioned at some point earlier, not today, but another time, that the city may consider buying land for development. Have you identified particular sites that you think would be prime pieces of property to acquire?
Now, I'm not going to tell you which sites there are, what the city's going to buy.
Price of double.
That's a trap in the making. But we're always looking out for property to purchase. That's an ongoing initiative. But the acquisition of new property is an important economic development activity, as you rightfully know. So we're always out for the hunt, so to speak, and that's the best I can give you.
Speaking out for the hunt, have you been able to identify a strategy to go after core downtown businesses that may now find the need to shrink down their footprint and have their facilities closer to where their employees live, so they don't have to drive so far to go to work? Do you have a strategy to go after those entities that are fleeing downtown Portland?
Actually, yes, what we call the advanced team, which is part of that attraction activity with PGE and some of the others we'll announce at a later date. But Communications Northwest, I mentioned in the presentation, was one of those. Okay. That came to Oregon City because they needed to get out of Portland. They needed a more friendly, business-friendly environment. And that's the other thing. We need to promote our business-friendly posture in Oregon City so that that can come forth. But yes, we do have a strategy in regard to that. And there are a lot of companies that we don't want to leave that are in Oregon City that need larger space. Ironically, they're looking for larger space because they're growing. So it works both ways.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's a multifaceted, holistic approach as these companies are leaving the core, and they had to be there for reasons. They're looking for public safety, they're looking for recreational activities, they're looking for affordability, and they're looking for a workforce development that's readily available. So you got your work cut out for you.
Oh, absolutely.
What time is it now? Is it 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock? Okay. Do you want me to keep asking, or shall I wrap it up? Okay. I'm told to wrap it up. All right. Well, thank you, Tony and James.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, I hope everybody got a lot of good information out of that. We kind of put them on the hot seat every now and then just for the fun of it, make them squirm a little bit, but sounds like they were ready for it today. So next month, we're going to stay in kind of a headline topic. As we were sharing earlier, the governor has put a mandate out of increasing our building supply of new homes from presently around 20,000 to 36,000. How do you do that? Nobody's got a magic wand. How do you do that? So we're going to go into a little bit of a further deep dive as to what really needs to change in our Oregon land use system in order to start streamlining the entitlement and approval process, streamlining the zoning of land to become developable. Each city is required to have a 20-year supply of buildable land within their city limits. But some of the lots that they say is buildable has a creek running through it, is steep this way, steep that way. It's not buildable. That's why it's still here. There's a reason why nobody bought it. So there really needs to be a much more thorough, comprehensive evaluation of larger tracts. And everybody's got to buy into this. Everybody. Planning commissions, city commissions, metro, otherwise it's not going to work. And what we have now is not working. Everybody knows it. So anyway, we're going to have a panel discussion. Summit, Seth Henderson of Summit, you still here? Seth, I think he left. Anyway, they're going to be the sponsor of the event next month. We'll be back on the 4th Tuesday, which will be the 28th. So with that being said, go out and enjoy the last day of January, and we will see you in February. Thank you.